Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you're new to this channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to join the community debate, then go to nathanoakley.com, check out the Flat Earth Debate forum. If you'd like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to this channel or you've not done so already, how dare you, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now, we are joined by SX, Unusual, Sleeping Warrior, Anti-Flat Earth, Merle, Greg, Chocolate Sane, Arwin, and 10th Man. Very good to have you all.
Good afternoon.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks, Nathan.
Very good to have you all. Let's do a bit of housekeeping. Any signs of Earth curvature?
There's no
No.
curvature
That's
to
just
the Earth.
funny.
However, you could act as if there were one.
Nah, I'd rather live in the real world. There's no curvature.
Right, axial rotation. Signs of that?
Come on, Anthony.
Nope.
Cannot be shown. There's none.
Signs of an axis. Before we get axial rotation, is there signs of an axis on a ball that's tilted? No.
There is no axial rotation to the Earth. However, you could act as if there were one.
Any scientific evidence of gravity?
All assumptions.
Nope.
Nope.
Aberration.
Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
There is no measurable distance to the sun. However, you could act as if there were one.
Cannot be measured.
But you don't know if there is no measurable distance to the sun, but there is no confirmed measured distance to the sun.
Or there is a distance to the sun.
Cannot be
But
done.
it's not literal. It's not literally the
No,
distance
it's
to the sun.
presupposed. But that's not, that's the thing about measuring.
Haven't made the
Right,
tape
there
measure yet.
there is none.
Any evidence that you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container for all the fundies who believe the sky is a vacuum called outer space?
No.
Well, there may be an outer gas pressure, but only one way to find out.
Oh yeah? What's that?
Well, going up very, very high. Beyond anything. If that is even physically possible.
Okie dokie then. Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
No. Have I missed the gravity question?
Yes.
Be a fake experiment.
You haven't missed much.
No evidence for gravity then, eh? I thought it might have changed over the weekend. I believe there was a show.
Give it some time.
You'll have to fill me in what you're talking about, Anthony. I have no idea what you're on about.
But even some ballers now are claiming that gravity is not a force, but you can treat it as if it is. So, yeah, it's an aberration.
And
Give
who
it a
was
couple
that,
of
Alan?
years,
Did you
and we'll
say
have
his name?
say again. Was that you, Mel?
So
One
far,
sec.
it's only the ballers who've backtracked on their meaning of gravity. Flat earthers have remained steady.
Oh, that's good.
Are
At
we?
least we've got consistent nonsense on our side. Well, that's great.
Arwin, who said that about gravity?
So are you saying,
Right.
Nathan, your show is predictable because it's consistent?
Well, no. I'm saying that the people who arbitrarily assign a force to an arbitrarily assigned direction, at least they're consistent, was what you were saying, right? The flat earthers have at least kept their argument consistent, whereas the globers, force, non-force, that you can consider a force, isn't consistent, correct?
Correct.
Well, so what? If I consistently claim there's unicorn farts, does that give any validity whatsoever to my consistency in my assertion? Well, no.
Yeah, but we use the second law and the first law.
We're talking at cross purposes. I'm talking about the flat earthers who want to hold on to this idea that we've got gravity. That's who I'm referring
Oh, I
to.
see. Okay, gotcha.
We're talking at cross purposes.
No, I got you now. In that context, you're right.
Well, holding on to gravity, it's not even that. It's more like holding on to that there is a force disequilibrium. Holding on to the roots of what originally spawned gravity, as it is conceptualized now, in supposed science.
I'm going to go buy me a gravimeter.
I'll just use a scale.
Any evidence of the R value? Earth radius?
Radius. Can we find curvature first and then prove it's a ball first and then measure the radius? We missed a few steps.
Yeah, I'll agree, but it's used all the time though, isn't it? Let's be honest.
But I can give a Lewis train of argument to counter it though, if you can bear with me, as I bared sitting through that yesterday on Jose's.
So you got a Lewis Hackett. You're playing devil's advocate for Lewis Hackett. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
go
what he
ahead.
said basically, this is his train of thought, okay, about curvature, about the obstruction. He said, look, if you're on a, and this is so straightforward walking into the pit, but look, if you were on a globe, then you would see the curvature, you would see obstruction because of the curvature. And then I told him, yeah, look, but you get that weird obstruction effect, a concealment, whatever exactly causes that remains a mystery, but you can empirically prove to yourself that when you look over a confirmed measured flat surface, there will still be concealment effects natural to optics. So there will always be concealment. And he would just say, no, because on a ball you would have concealment because of curvature. Therefore, what we see, it must be curvature. And that's why
Wow.
it's a ball. That happened yesterday on Jose's.
I must have turned off by that point, I think.
I think that's it. I think that concludes the housekeeping. I think we covered everything. Thank you for taking part.
They've had to slightly
Everybody,
manage. I'm sorry, go ahead.
oh no, that's okay. I was just seeing if everybody can hear me now and I'm not breaking everything up again.
Is that M. Scott
Switched over
feature?
I'm clear.
No, you sound better.
Is that M. Scott
to-
feature?
Excellent. Thank you. Unfortunately, no.
You sound a lot like him.
Unfortunately.
Oh, you want to be him? You want an astronaut?
No. I think
not
him saying
not even
unfortunately
trying to
was
remember who that is.
unfortunately your assumption is wrong. I think that's what he means.
Sure. So, what are we going to talk about then? Let me put a cat in amongst the pigeons. There is no gravity. There is no universal up and down. Does anybody disagree? I mean, if you do, can we have some evidence?
I don't know. You don't. Yeah, you can't say there isn't a universal up and down, but you can't say there is because you must confirm that to be the case.
I'll
First.
tell you what's an interesting prospect. I said it in the last show. I'm not sure if we were live when I said it, but I'll say it again now. Oh, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask Paul the question because I never got a response from Paul, or is he not here? Paul's
It's
gone.
not here.
Damn. I wanted to know when Bob presented the gravimeter and he was using the gravimeter to make the point that there must be a bias. There's a direction of some kind. I think that there is an equally likely possibility or an equally likely interpretation for the thing that the gravimeter is measuring is either ethereal, and it's the flow of energy from above, electromagnetic or otherwise, or what other forces are there out there that are described as omnipotent, everywhere all at once, that might not be scientific, but nonetheless most people tend to accept that it probably exists. God, perhaps it's detecting the presence of something supernatural that is almighty that we can't do anything with. We know is there, but we don't have the interaction to communicate with it. Maybe it's picking that up. And
No.
I'm not saying it is.
Go on.
I'm just spitballing that it is picking something up. But the fact that science seems to be unable to prove what it's measuring by manipulating it indicates that perhaps it's God.
They don't do it. They don't manipulate it. They just deduce it again. It's just another form of a scale.
Can we all stop just making shit up, please?
I'm just saying that there's other explanations for what the gravimeter is claimed to be proving.
Yeah, the same thing as a scale does. It's a deduction-based system.
Yeah, Rumpus was going on about the scales before, calling us all morons. Is Rumpus still in chat? I'd like to address him if he is. Let's have a little look.
Well, Anthony,
You know what's funny is when Bob was making his presentation on Globebusters, he said something basically like what Rumpus says, that weight is in fact a force. And in fact, I mean, Sleeping Warrior, in the last show, you were talking a little bit about the fact that, you know, that this is kind of irrelevant and this is taking away from the win against Mooser. Well, I mean, literally what Bob's arguing is that it is a force, the downward force. He may not want to call it gravity. He is arguing that that is in fact a force. And like, if his point has any kind of merit to it, it does kind of take away from the Mooser.
But what Bob's saying is that he realizes that gravity, the way we're told, isn't it? He said he expressly states that it is not mass attracting mass and it is not bendy space time.
Right. He thinks it's something electromagnetic. He's all into the electric universe and all that.
And I'm not discrediting. I'm not dismissing that. That may well be true. But what we can all agree is that it's not this thing that we're being told, right? But what we shouldn't really be pushing is none of us should really be pushing it hard that there is anything causing it, because it may be something else altogether that's beyond our ability to interpret what we're looking at. It could be God that we're looking at.
well, Anthony,
Right. And I thought it was interesting on Globebusters too yesterday, but Hero kind of made the point to Bob at one point when Bob was talking about proving it. And he goes, well, you're showing something, but there's really no way to ever test this. And, you know, the usual thing, literally, you cannot isolate the variable here. So you're never going to be able to prove it. The best you can get is a story like I heard Bob tell yesterday.
Yeah.
Anthony,
Go on.
is it pretty obvious by now that Bob does not respect or accept the narrow definition of the scientific method as Nathan put out on his show, but conceded to it? But conceded to it at the moment, and then obviously we saw what happened after that, correct?
Shout out to Jose spamming the chat with his link. Yeah, it's obvious that Bob doesn't understand, or I don't want to say this in a bad way, but it's obvious that Bob does not know the strength of the independent variable, which is it's the presumed cause. You've got to wiggle it, and then when you wiggle it, you establish the cause and effect relationship, unless somebody shows that there is a different cause that causes the same effect and you got it wrong. If you demonstrate the cause and effect, then you are within scientific method. That doesn't mean that you can infer additional causes.
Yes, but I want the application of my question to come out in a different way. So since he has already stated live that he doesn't accept the narrow method, he must accept some method, correct?
Yeah, but if he's going to not accept the narrowness of it, that makes him a pseudoscientist.
Well, exactly. So now, since he accepts some other method and not the narrow method, he comes out with this gravimeter. So where does that put that in relationship?
It puts it into a lovely story that we can't prove a cause and effect relationship.
Right. So why am I even listening?
Bob calls it the preponderance of evidence.
Yeah.
So why am I even listening to him after Mooser destroyed gravity and the intervening force between the two objects doesn't exist, but you can think as if there was one. Why would I mean, this is such a win on both ends, a win over everything.
I think ultimately, the reality is it's his show and he can do what he wants, kind of thing. But yeah, I think that the narrowness of the scientific method is important, because if you've got a gravimeter that you're going to claim measures unicorn farts, I mean gravity or some force or whatever, it's that. What kind of use is that as a piece of equipment unless you can manipulate it to prove a cause and effect relationship? And of course, the answer is it's pseudo-scientific, and it doesn't prove something. So yeah, it might be lovely, but
How
what
many
is it measuring?
times?
Yeah, they did
How
ask
many-
him that, right? They asked him what's the application for that thing. I mean,
How many times since I didn't see the show did he mention vacuum?
Not that many times.
But was it ever mentioned in
Although we did have
relationship?
to have all this.
Was it in
Yeah.
relationship to the gravimeter though when he did?
Yeah, he had this mind exercise where you have like a hammer in space and you drop it. Which direction does it travel in?
Okay, so now he's violated the second law of thermodynamics and created a vacuum of space. So now here's another reason why I don't watch that show.
I think if I could say anything to Bob personally, I would say, Bob, look, at the end of the day, the independent variable is important. That's the backbone of science, because it proves the cause and effect relationship. If you've got a gravimeter that's got no cause and effect relationship, it's useless. It might be useful in future, but right now it's useless because it doesn't have anything that we can prove is a cause and effect. Certainly not in our realm. It might be of another realm. It might be spiritual or otherwise. Who knows what it's measuring? It does seem to be measuring something. What that is, we can just guess. It's spitball time. But you shouldn't be pushing it as absolute truth, because you have absolutely no idea what's causing it.
But Bob, it seems like, and I can't speak for him, it seems like he's still going back to support. He's going back to try to support an original bias that he has, and has to bring in space. He has to bring in gravimeter. He's got to bring a loose interpretation of the narrow scientific method that we have understood, all to support a bias.
Correct. All to support pseudoscience as well.
Well, then that's easy. That's exactly what my assessment is. Why not just? I mean, think about this. 2019. We all have different backgrounds, and we're talking about the shape of the Earth. Obviously, it's what they've told us is not true, or else we wouldn't be talking about it.
Correct.
Could it be that he's just?
My,
Could it be that he's just got a wrong perception of how he sees science?
It's a bias. It's a bias because you're trying to force everything into your bias rather than accept it. Like if I get schooled on something, I have to say, you know what, I was wrong.
Right, but here's the thing is,
I'm sorry, Unusual, I muted you because you're causing feedback. My bad, I thought it was SX talking.
no, that wasn't me.
Sorry, Unusual. Do you want to just pop yourself back off mute? I muted you because I thought you'd done talking and you were causing feedback.
okay, there we go. Now I lost my train of thought, I think. No, but yeah, we lost it. I apologize. It'll come
That's
I
back.
was-
my bad. Sorry.
I was gonna ask. I mean, could the fact could acceleration be the problem? Because it seems like he was trying to reiterate that obviously with acceleration you need a force, right?
That
So could that be what's behind this? Like we need a force because
why
we
I'm-
see acceleration.
So let me ask this.
I
then.
mean,
Yeah.
because like how do you remember how Jaren said that, you know, if an object is falling, right, it's got a momentum, and if it's still in a medium that's less dense than itself, it's going to keep falling, and it
Okay.
would fall, and it makes sense that it would get faster as it fell. Like he said, it would be faster, it would be going faster in second 4 than second 3, right? That was the example that he used.
Okay,
me
just
ask
before that gets
Let me
addressed,
ask
just
that
want to
one.
shout out, hold on, shout out to Leonardo Gonzalez for the super chat. Thank you very much indeed. What I will add to what you've just said is your story started with it about to fall. It's like, oh right, how was it in the position where it was about to fall so we could start the measuring of it accelerating from its position in disequilibrium, not in equilibrium? So what are we measuring here? Something that we've taken up? Because on the video that you played at the beginning of the last show, there was a machine throwing things in the air, was there not? So you're trying to explain a force for why they come down, and then have this non sequitur of the relative speeds that they travel. Well, what caused it was the machine throwing them up in the air. Before that machine did its thing, none of them were moving at all. But here we are with the effect of what the machine's done being studied.
Yeah, basically what you're saying is you're pulling the cherry tomato out of equilibrium and then blaming the machine, ignoring the effect of the machine, which is you pulling it out of disequilibrium,
Right.
and then attributing a force to it.
Yeah, you've got a beach ball on the side of the beach. It's not doing anything. Might roll around if the wind blows it, but ultimately it just stays there, not moving up, not moving down, not moving in these arbitrary directions that we assign. Nevertheless, you come along and you go, right, I'm going to grab this ball and force it into disequilibrium. Now I struggle to get it into disequilibrium, expelling in a bit of energy. Then I say to you, right, at this point now, what happens when I let go of the ball? Why does it go? What direction is it going to go exactly? Can someone tell me?
Going to go a direction that's relative to you, isn't it?
Well, just tell me, based on the explanation given so far, which direction is the ball going to go?
It's gonna go
Relative
back
to its density.
equilibrium.
But it depends entirely on where I've put the ball. So if I've struggled to get it under the water, then it's going to go relative to us up. Whereas if I've climbed up a tree and then dropped it, it's going to go relative to us down. Well, those two directions are entirely opposing each other, purely based on the medium that you forced it into in the first place. So before we came along, happy beach ball doing nothing, then we force it into disequilibrium and go, why does it travel in this direction at a given rate? Well, because you forced it into disequilibrium, that's why. Why do these things drop at a different rate? Well, you chucked them all in the air. The rate you can calculate based on their relative density.
Yeah.
And to that
Yes, it's all just relative.
and that movement that is doing is what they call velocity, right? When the ball goes down or up,
Acceleration initially.
acceleration.
And
Yeah. Sorry, I just like to call it displacement of the less dense.
Yeah, that's what I call it.
Yeah, it's a displacement. That's all it is.
Let me just address Chocolate's previous point. If you're in a car doing 100 miles an hour, is there a force acting on you whilst you're doing the constant 100 miles an hour? And basically, if you look at the definition for force, there's not an interaction, a push or a pull acting on you, because the car is the thing that's creating the force. I would say there is a force pushing on you, but it's the car. The car's pushing you in a lateral direction at that speed. But there's an argument to say, well, you're not feeling any force because you're in the stationary frame of reference that's inside the car. So because the car's got a momentum, speed, and because you're in a non-moving reference point inside the car, you've only got an apparent force on you. And as a result of your momentum, when you hit a corner, then when you make that turn at 100 miles an hour, you're going to get thrown across the car, right? But you haven't got a direct force on you because it's the car that's the force, not you. And I think that's a silly way of trying to describe forces, because you are in the car and the car is propelling you, right? That is really a force. But science says, nah, it's not. You're in a static frame of reference. So you're feeling the effects of the momentum, but it's not actually on you. It's on the car that you're in.
That's nonsense.
You're not technically receiving a force.
No.
I think that's
no.
nonsense.
That explanation's not correct. So what's happening in the car is the car's pushing on the back of you physically in that direction, and that's become constant. It's still pushing you from behind in the direction that you're travelling at 100 miles an hour. Now, if you're a race car driver, you're strapped in, so you're prevented from moving, not just with the car pushing you from behind, because obviously if you slam the brakes on, what's in front of you to stop you? Oh, the steering wheel. Big shout out to Tina Baker for the super chat. Woo! $50, thank you very much. Yeah, there's nothing in front of you, there's just air. So because there's nothing stopping you and resisting you or keeping you as one with the car, you fly forwards or sideways if you turn left. So if you're strapped in, though, you suddenly become at one with the moving car. And there's not this apparent force. No, there's just nothing resisting you from carrying on going forward as the car was projecting you when it turns. It's like if you've got just a single pole behind you. You know, you're on a pair of roller skates with a conveyor belt that's getting faster and faster, and there's a pole that pushes you. Well, at some point, when the pole moves to the left and leaves you travelling along the conveyor, in other words, it's pushed you and then moved off to the left. Well, it moving off to the left doesn't change your direction because it's not pushing you in a sideways motion. It's going in a sideways motion. You just carry on forward. Well, the fact that there's a door in the way, in the case of a car, doesn't mean that suddenly there's this magical force because they describe the effect as an apparent force. It's meaningless. You know, you can describe things any way you like. It doesn't make them a force. If I describe getting dizzy and then say, oh, there's an apparent force of dizziness because I've experienced this effect, it's like, well, no, you can describe what happened with the effect. If you get into the great detail of how the car's not resisting you on a particular axis, and if it changes directions, you've got nothing to stop you travelling as you were in the current direction, well, that's not an apparent... That doesn't make the apparent force, the fictitious force, a force. It isn't. The only thing that's at play that's causing anything to be forced forward in the first instance is the car. It just doesn't resist you to the right when you turn left. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I just see it as a more just hijacking of words and mixing and matching and throwing them into equations, and just to reiterate that there's some type of force holding us down to the floor, and that same force is holding these celestial bodies in the air doing what they're doing. It's just bullshit.
I've just thought of another better explanation for how you can explain how directions are relative. In my example with the car travelling forward and then you turn left, you get thrown right. Would you agree? You get thrown into the right-hand door when you turn left. Would you agree?
Yep.
Does that mean that you're being thrown right?
No.
No. You're carrying on in the straight line, and the reference frame that was around you pushing you from behind turns about the direction that you're turning, and there's nothing to resist you on the right hand side, so you fly out of the seat and hit the door. From your relative position, you've travelled right inside the car, inside that frame of reference, but you haven't actually turned right. This apparent force has made you turn right. You haven't. You've continued in a straight line, and the car has turned around you. That's what's actually happened. But from your relative position, what have you done? Oh, I just moved rapidly right in the car. Well, that's a relative direction. That's why it's not absolute.
Then if you had somebody sitting in the car, let's say in the back seat facing to the back, they would have flown to the left.
If they were,
To their relative
yeah, if they
left.
were in like a reverse baby seat looking out the back window or something.
Exactly, that's what I was thinking.
Exactly. And the same
To that
applies.
baby would be left.
Yeah, and the same applies to up and down. They are relative. These are directions that aren't absolute.
Yeah.
So there's been a change made to the show today. So for these debates going forward, I'm going to open up the Discord server. So I hadn't mentioned it at the beginning because I'm doing this very tentatively at the moment. There's only SX in there at the moment. But there is a Discord server which we've used previously to varying degrees of success on the Ballbusters show. But as I'm using it more and more, I'm ironing out some of the creases. So if people do want to join, obviously it relies on me actually spotting you being in there and then opening your mic. But yeah, there's a Discord link now. So hopefully that'll encourage people to join the Science versus Pseudoscience Discord server. And yeah, they'll hopefully go out slightly more frequently on these shows. So there'll be 2 links. So So typically the show does fill up fairly quickly on the Google Plus Hangout. So there'll be extra gaps, if you will, on the Discord server if you still want to join the show. The links will be refreshed each day, so they directly take you to the correct place. So there you go. YI. So have you, Ranty, there at the moment?
So, can everybody hear me again? Am I breaking up, doing
Yeah,
horrible
we-
things?
You're all good.
We hear you.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think the argument about relative directions is pretty easy to understand. I think that, if Bob was listening to that, not to speak for him or anything, but if he was listening to what you just went through right there, Nathan, I think he would say, sure, that all makes sense. But it goes back to what the bias is here. And I think the only thing that Bob's ever been trying to say, and he's trying to work at it at a roundabout way, is that he believes that the Earth plane has a bias, an electromagnetic bias of some kind that's attracting things towards it. And then he'll cite examples like acceleration down is faster, or the example in the 0G plane with the density tower and all that kind of stuff. And so essentially he's just trying to really kind of losing my train of thought there, but essentially I just feel like he's trying to just prove that the Earth has a bias, that it's pulling it towards it. And so you can say whatever you want about relative directions. To him, he just feels that the same thing that's causing magnetism and the same thing that is responsible for the stars, which again, this is very similar to the heliocentric model, and there isn't really a lot to back it up aside from conjecture. But again, I just don't think the argument can be won with the people that are arguing this based on them not understanding what relative directions are, I guess is my point.
So the flat earthers who believe in an absolute down with a force attached to it are onto a loser, is what you're saying.
Well, they're definitely onto something that isn't able to be proven scientifically. Again, just bringing up, I think Jaren and Iru kept on trying to make that point to Bob yesterday during his presentation, that it's an interesting story, but you're never really going to be able to prove it. But from what I can see and watching Globe Busters for years and your show and all this, is Bob has a narrative. He has a narrative about the electric universe. He has a narrative about how all this works. He needs in his mind there to be a bias that sets up and down. And no matter how logical it is that, whatever direction stuff went down towards relatively, that's going to be down. Like that, it doesn't matter to him because it fits into the whole rest of his worldview. And I mean, it's kind of the same problem that you ran into, Nathan, when you went and tried to explain about proving the spin of the Earth and all that ridiculousness. It's part of his narrative, and he's just going to defend it. And it really isn't any different than the globe. And I mean, I do think it is suspicious that this came up this weekend, right after the George Musa stuff. I mean, literally, that's what Globebusters should have been about, in my opinion. But
now that's a point I was going to make.
Yeah, I do kind
Got
of
a couple of guests in the Discord server.
right,
So-
and I don't mean to say that Bob's any kind of anything. It's just it's weird to me that this is the week that we would pick to choose about this, because literally Bob's point is saying that Musa doesn't know what he's talking about. Gravity is a force. Now Bob might not want to even call it gravity, but he was in the chat earlier. Downward force. Completely undermines everything that was admitted in that Fight the Flat Earth interview, which, I don't know, it's very interesting.
It's like your favorite sports team just won the biggest tournament of the year, and instead of talking about that a day or two later, you go talk about something that happened 20 years ago.
Right.
What will be, right? If people have still got this belief, then so be it. We can address that.
But you said it earlier, Nathan. Who needs acceleration and a force? which side of the camp needs that?
That was going to be the next thing I came to. It's like, I mean, I don't watch a great deal of Globebusters. I did tune in periodically yesterday to see what was being talked about. But what's maybe someone on the panel can explain what is in it for Bob? You know, what does he need the Force for exactly?
Right, and again, I just think it's for his electromagnetic model that he has. That basically it's kind of similar to Nathan. You had that guy a couple months ago, the one who kept on talking about his 10,000 page scientific paper, and he had a similar kind of idea to it too. That it's creating that gravity is basically it's electromagnetic in nature, and it's just setting a small bias. And so again, like the globe people obviously need gravity because the globe can't work without it. But if you believe in this electric, and you see, I do a horrible job explaining it, but it's not my theory. So I guess I really can't feel too bad about it.
Can you hear us, Babs, in the Discord server? Is it Babs?
Yeah. I actually have a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Yeah, okay. If I'm laying on my back, which direction is up? Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, we heard you. I'm waiting to see who gives you an answer.
Oh, okay.
In front of you.
Or let me change it a little bit. If I'm laying on my stomach, which direction is up?
What are you laying on?
That's not relevant to his question.
Laying on the floor.
He's laying on the floor. He's on his belly. Which way's up? Simple question.
Behind you.
Isn't that behind you?
Yeah, behind me.
Or you just gotta put your face up, and that's pointing up, isn't it?
Yeah, so is up and down more of like a function of human senses
Yeah.
Yes.
rather than being an objective like direction?
Correct.
Yeah, in a nutshell.
Well, yeah,
Okay,
I mean,
perfect. Yeah.
if you're facing down on the floor, like he said, up technically to you, your experience of up would be going behind you, right? Facing
I think
away
you did
from
something
you.
wrong there, Chocolate. You say facing down. You just gotta say facing the ground.
Yeah, if you're facing the ground, because
There you go.
because we're humans, that's what we call these things, right? So if you're facing the floor, in your experience, up would be going behind you, right?
No,
But that
it will
doesn't
be
really
going.
make sense because you're facing the floor, right?
You just gotta lift your face, and that's up for you. So whatever you're pointing when you lift your face, that's up for you.
I mean, even with your eyes closed, you can tell which direction up is. So it's not so much based on orientation. It's more so just like a sense thing.
No, you can't. Have you ever been on a car and like if you close your eyes, like in a long trip, and you go to sleep, and then you wake up, and you have your eyes closed, you cannot tell like where you at, or like in, how do I say? If you know like the roads, right? And you know which direction you're turning and everything. But if you lose sense of for a couple minutes of that, of the turns and everything, you don't know anymore like which direction you're going. Then you gotta open your eyes
I mean,
and you gotta orientate yourself.
You mean when you get off of balance? When you get off of balance and your inertia gets screwed up with, I mean, you can still tell
Exactly.
which
Well, that's
direction
another
up
way to see it,
is,
yeah.
though.
Well, the
Even in a
example I
roller
put
coaster, you
earlier
can
today,
still
it was
tell
like
which direction up is.
the example I put, if you're in in the middle of the lake and you're deep in the water, and somebody covers your eyes, and then they spin you a lot, then they tell you to point down. Where are you gonna point?
Towards the floor.
But you have your eyes covered. How do you know where the floor is?
Because you have this thing inside your head called an inner ear that lets you know which direction you oriented in.
They spin you. You know, you lost orientation.
And if you're spun.
Huh?
You might feel dizzy, but you can still tell the directions of up and down.
Well, no. Once your inner ear, once those three, what is it? I forget what they're called now. Those three little coils that have got a fluid in them, if they've all been shook up and shook about, then they're not referencing anything. That's what dizziness is. This is a fairly convoluted example, but it's an interesting conversation nonetheless.
Yeah, definitely.
So
you may the reason why you may be able on this example to point down to the ground is because the density of your body is gonna try to pull you to the surface, and that's why in that moment you're gonna realize like, okay, so I'm trying to go up to the water, and so you're gonna point down. But if you didn't have that density, you will not be able to tell.
It would orientate itself, and you would just be suspended there.
Exactly, yeah.
And then your natural instinct would be to point towards your feet, because to you naturally that's down.
Exactly.
But you could be floating upside down.
Only during a very
have
short
no
period
idea.
Only during that very short period of time when all of those fluids are mixed up in your inner ear. Only for a very, very short period of time.
Right.
At some point they'll settle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I was just saying, just
Yeah,
but
that's what
the density of your body would start taking you in a certain direction. You would know that that's up, just because you're a human. You would just know that's up, so you would know which way is down.
Yeah, based on that functionality of your inner ear, you then define what you call up and down. That's the point.
Doesn't people lose orientation when they get on that, like that roller coaster where you extend your arms and your feet and then you spin all over, like to all the sides? Doesn't people lose orientation on those things?
What do you mean, the gravitron?
I don't know.
No. It's like they have it on like, it's not a roller coaster. I don't know how to call them, but you stand your arms, they hook you, and that thing spins like in 3 different ways. You don't know what I'm talking about?
Oh,
yeah, it's essentially a gyroscope.
It's like a gyro.
Yeah,
some type of human gyro machine type
First
thing.
wheel.
Right?
It's making me nauseous just hearing about it.
Yeah, I know what he's talking about. I don't know what it's called though.
But the same principle.
That's only a temporary effect.
Exactly, the same principle applies.
What if one was in like the International Space Station though, with those fluids floating around?
Nah, that's in space, and
it's in a fake medium. You can't make the example in Narnia because we can't go there.
We will not go there. We're not Bob.
Yeah, nobody's going there. Can't go there.
Why do we need
that's why
acceleration?
Bob. That's why.
Sorry, say that again, 10th man.
So why do we need acceleration? Who would want to use that argument?
Someone pushing something.
Yes.
I think the question is why do we need acceleration? Why does acceleration we have acceleration, but why does acceleration need a force?
George Muser. George Muser said that between the two objects, there is no intervening force. Where is the acceleration?
Well, the acceleration is there. It just depends on what's causing the acceleration. Is the acceleration being caused by the mass of the objects that we're looking at, or is it being caused by a magnetic force? Which one makes
Look,
more sense?
It's as simple as this. I get in my car, I drive to the grocery store, which is, say, 10 miles away. I need a force to get me there, and the car's my force, and it accelerates me there. According to Musser, though, I get in my car, and I'm at the store without the acceleration, without the force.
Yes. Let me just give an acknowledgement there to Nathan's last comment. Somebody said, who would push a force? And Nathan said, anybody wanting to push something. If you didn't catch the humour in that, it was funny.
I got it.
It were a good one-liner.
So what Musser did was destroy acceleration and the intervening distance between one point to another. And it sounds like Globebusters took a hit on their philosophy and had to come back and double down and side with somehow with acceleration.
Bob took it. Busters. I always feel that point this out. Bob is the one pushing this on Globebusters. Jared, Drew, and Morgile. Like I with Bob.
No, I don't
over the last few weeks. And
Bob clearly is pushing it. Jaren's he's the one that's opposing it because Jaren's like sees it the way that I see it, and the other two are like, well, I'm not so sure. I kind of lean a little bit more towards Bob than Jaren at this point, but they're entitled to. We're trying to work this shit out, right? We don't know the answers, but what we're saying is that there don't need to be a force in our model. Yeah, it might harm the idea that the Earth must be flat if there is a universal up and down. I see that point.
Hold on a second, Anthony.
Hold on. The case just
Anthony, hold on. Pete, you're causing all sorts of terrible chaos with your sound. Hello, good to have you, though.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. It's all we can hear.
Hi, Pete.
Do you think there's a force, Pete?
Bob's example with a zero-G plane was ridiculous. I mean, he's literally taking this density tower and he's like, I'm going to shake it around, and I'm wondering why the liquids in this density tower are mixing. That's because you're shaking it around.
Yeah.
Zero G is impossible.
Right.
I mean, if
and then
gravity
expecting
doesn't
it to
exist,
coalesce
there's no
back
zero G.
together while it's falling.
I've watched that clip many times because ballers have presented it to me loads of times, and it's Pete, turn your volume down a bit.
Okay.
Pete, it's the second time I've had to say you're causing audio chaos.
Because I've watched it that many times, you can literally get it in super slow-mo, and you can get it to the point where you see the guy jerk backwards, and it might be accidental, it might be intentional. It's difficult to tell because other people do seem to do the same thing too, but he jerks. Now, when he jerks, his arm jerks with him, and obviously the receptacle that's got the fluids in it goes with him with the momentum, right? He's caused it, but it collapses because he's caused that jolt. He does the jolt for whatever reason. But ballers refuse to accept it. They literally, I've had it with Rumpus. Rumpus will not accept that he's jolted it, and I'm like, come on, all of them, they're all idiots.
Not just that, in the zero-G plane, the force of the dip causes you to move upwards. So what are they expecting is going to happen to a liquid, especially a liquid that has different densities composing of it? Like, they're wondering why it's mixing, but that's exactly what you'd expect to happen in a situation like that. It has nothing to do with gravity.
I agree. The thing is, if he's going to argue that the gravimeter is in some way doing something, right? Let's just say, for argument's sake, that it is. It's clearly at the molecular level. It's at the atomic level. It's not at a level that we can perceive. But then to argue that the zero-G plane is demonstrating that thing, that's like comparing a panel pin to a 15-inch bolt and saying that they both do the same job. Yeah, they do, but one's like trillions of times bigger than the other, and you only need a panel pin, right? Because that's what his argument is with the gravimeter. That's the panel pin, and then he's got the zero-G plane. That's the sledgehammer. They're not comparable.
I think
That's
the
not
only
the same
way
thing.
you can make sense of this argument that Bob is putting up as a acceleration is to go to Musser and quote Musser. And Musser said, it's magical.
Anybody got an idea for why Jaren didn't cite Musser at any point? I mean, it'd have been on the tip of my tongue.
So let me quote Musser.
It's probably
So-
because I don't know. Bob doesn't like anyone challenging him. Maybe that's why.
Maybe it's because he doesn't want to glorify.
So here's Musser. So there's really no way that the force got from one place to the other in a sense of how it exerted its action. That was the magical component of Newton's laws, recognized by him and others at his time. I thought it was science.
Why does it matter? Why does it matter what Musa says? Does he make the rules? Like, what are his credentials? Why does it matter what he says?
It's just because he writes for Scientific American and he's perceived to be credible in his field. So it's not that necessarily personal to him. It's just personal to the role that he plays.
He's
But hang on, this guy Musser, right? He's just saying what is sort of part of this established science since Einstein, and shortly before that as well, that the whole idea of force in the traditional Newtonian sense has been discarded in favor of this relativistic universe where everything is a product of the bending of space-time. So
he doesn't think this.
But he's come out and
Well,
confirmed the point that we've been arguing this whole time is that gravity is not a force. That's that's the whole point that we've been arguing this whole time, that somehow
but
there's a force coming from the earth propagating and affecting the moon the same way the moon's gravity is affecting the tides on the earth. I mean, it's ridiculous. And this
but
guy,
if you're fighting with clowns who hold that position, and this is not the position of established science, then well, who are you fighting against? This is the ultimate purpose. But that is the position of science, right? That gravity is no longer a force; it is an effect. Due to the bending of space-time.
But isn't that the double speak? Isn't that the double speak though? Because
of course it is.
It's not that it's no longer a force. It's that it was never a force.
But hang on,
They turned something that was never literally a force into some mathematics, and now we have a force. You know.
This is what I say.
So I agree with you.
Yeah,
I agree with you. That's all nonsense.
All Earth is metaphor. It's all metaphoric, right?
Of all the people Craig at Fight the Flat Earth could go to, he went to Musser. To what? To show Riley was wrong. And what does Musser do?
Well, he stabs him in the eye with a compass and makes Craig think somehow that he supported him with double speak.
I know, but what actually happened? It proved your point, Riley.
Yeah.
Musser,
I have a
he
question.
had anybody he could go to. He could quote the deceased. He could quote Einstein. He could quote Carl Sagan if he wanted to. No, he went to a living person named George Musser to shut you down. And then George Musser lifted you up. I mean, this is fantastic.
I think we've got to remember the reason why he picked on that phrase. I think the way I interpret it is he brought up the point about, he said, if it was relative density, things would slow down as they get into the denser medium. And I said, that's exactly what Felix Bauengarder did on his atmospheric jump. And then I demonstrated it. He went from like 600 down to like 120 miles an hour. And it just basically poos all over his point, right? It makes him look like a dick. I think he took personal offense, not offense, but he took that personally and then decided that he was going to, right, I'll find you. What have you said that I think stupid? And he obviously picked on snaps the wand, right? So he picks on that, even though he's got it in writing in front of him. He's picked on that to go for. Of all the things, he could have picked anything, but that's the one he went for. And then he's decided he's going to challenge it. And when he's challenged it, Musa, if you look at if you look at how he presented himself, he would initially agree with Craig and then backpedal a little bit and then maybe agree with Craig again. But he was all over the place. He didn't say anything consistently. He would double speak throughout the whole conversation. And then somehow Craig got the impression that he supported Musa supported him. But to anybody that listens to the whole context, including the cuts that he's got, that he won't show what really happened. But although somebody said he has done, but I don't know where it is. But the point is, he's got these this devastating kick to the nuts, right? But somehow he's managed. He thinks he's supported by Musa, and I'm like, you must be so far in denial that you don't know what's real and what's not real anymore. There is absolutely no way that Musa supported you there, Craig. And for you to think that, yeah, you can think that in the same way that you can think gravity is a force. Don't make it that you won, though, does it? Everybody can see that you didn't win. But he's still pushing it that he did.
Riley, let
listen,
me ask you something. You
hang
say
on, Riley.
that. Okay.
Yeah,
Go on.
I want to say that you, from my understanding, you quoted Musser, and then the way Craig started his show, he says, quote unquote, my dad always told me, don't screw around, just go to the source. So I did. And here's my interview with George Musser, contributing editor of Scientific America, suck it, Riley. So Craig goes to George Musser, who you quoted somehow. Okay, I never saw that one personally. And he's going to now go to the source to discredit you. And then the source he goes to says that gravity is not a force, it's magical.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It is magic.
But this is their position
Aberration.
all along. Is that not what Craig Fight the Flat Earth is doing in the first place? Is he's saying that, well, you've just misunderstood my position all along, and I knew exactly what gravity was, but for this purpose or that purpose, we can look at it like this. Is that not what's just been confirmed? Because, as I said, the whole notion of gravity in the traditional sense, force in the traditional sense, has been discarded 100 years now.
Right,
If a-
because every
if a
time
baller-
George said that gravity wasn't a force, he tried to get him to reiterate that yes, it's not a force, but it manifests itself as one. It's that cute word play that they're trying, right? That's what I hear when I hear Fight the Flat Earth saying things like that, and George himself.
All of them,
because
they're all
that
on the
to
same
me is
side.
like it's like wizardry, magic. All right.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy even refers to it as magic himself, especially when a line like snapping the wand in two, implying magic, is what caused this entire thing in the first place, because that's the line that Riley picked out. And that's the line he had a problem with. So the guy comes out himself and says, yeah, we're talking about a magical force. Even brought it back to, it came from an idea when at the time science was kind of magical. What? Are you kidding?
There's a
It's
deeper
the
story
magic
to
of
that,
science.
Chocolate, and you're not quite explaining or putting across the deeper story and the long search over hundreds of years, as we're told, to get to the
And
bottom
with
of
that,
this.
I will say, if you are watching this on the Nathan Oakley premiering stream, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. However, if you're watching this live on Nathan Oakley 1980, first and foremost, a huge, massive thank you to all of you. Smash the super chat. Really do appreciate your support. Obviously, a massive thank you for tuning in, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. Again, a massive thank you to all of today's debating panel for making this debate possible. Be sure to check out the nathanoakley.com Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video. Stay tuned if you're watching on Nathan Oakley.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!